Hey, ¿qué es la que hay, mi gente? It's Rocky here from SpeakSpanishFaster.com, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the verb haber. Now, the verb haber is very nuanced, and I'll be honest with you, this wasn't the easiest video for me to do. Because, like I just said, haber is very nuanced. There are many different use cases, many different uses for the verb haber, and for the simple fact that it's so difficult to explain all the different uses, that kind of explains why so many students struggle with this verb. So that's why I'm doing this video for you today, to try to help you get a better grasp of this complex verb. So without further ado, I'm going to share my computer screen with you. Let's dive right in. All right, so let's talk about the verb haber. Para indicar la existencia de una cosa, o sea, de un sustantivo, el verbo haber siempre se expresa en la tercera persona del singular, incluso cuando el sustantivo es plural. And this is one of the most common ways you're going to hear the verb haber, okay? And that is to indicate the existence of something, something being there. So it's very common to hear hay, the word hay. Hay tres personas ahí. There's three people there. Hay demasiada gente en mi casa. There are too many people in my house. No había espacios libres en el estacionamiento. There were no spaces, no free spaces in the parking lot. ¿Habrá algún problema con nuestra presentación? Will there be a problem with our presentation? So this is the most common way that you're going to hear the verb haber is in hay, habrá, había, and notice these are all third person singular. So when we are using the verb haber to indicate the existence of something, it's always third person singular here. Even notice in the second example, no había espacios. It's not no habían. It's not plural there. It's always no había, habrá, hay, había, habrá. So just remember that. That is one of the most common ways you're going to hear the verb haber. Por otro lado, haber es uno de los verbos auxiliares más utilizados en el idioma español para complementar tiempos compuestos y se expresa conjugando el verbo haber seguido de un verbo participio, generalmente terminado en to, ado, cho, so o ido. So one of the best ways, easiest ways to explain this or understand this is that you will also hear the verb haber used to talk about things that happen in the past. Okay, so basically what you do is you conjugate haber based on the person. So it's, yo he, tú has, él ha, and then you will be changing that verb after to one of the examples I just said. Hado, cho, so, ido. So for example, no había escrito lo suficiente. He had not written enough. No ha escrito lo suficiente. He has not written enough. No habrá escrito lo suficiente. He will not have written enough. So as you can see, había, ha, habrá are all tied to the third person here, he, or it could be she. And then we change escrito. So had written. So escrito here is written. So we're changing the verb escribir, which is to write. Hemos han aceptado tu teoría sobre lo que sucedió. So yo he aceptado, I have accepted, hemos aceptado, we have accepted, han aceptado. Todos creen que han, has o hemos dicho la verdad. Todos creen que han. So everyone believes that they have said the truth or have told the truth. Todos creen que has dicho la verdad. Everyone thinks that you have told the truth. Has is to tú. Y todos creen que hemos dicho la verdad. So everyone believes that we have told the truth. Here's a few more examples. Habían impreso todos los documentos necesarios. Habíamos, hemos impreso. So impreso never changes. That's how it would be whether you're using habían to talk about had they printed all the documents, or habíamos to talk about have we printed all the documents, or hemos, have we printed all the documents? All right, necessary. So creo que nos hemos aburrido demasiado en esa fiesta. I think that we have been too bored during that party. Creo que nos habíamos or habríamos aburrido. Aburrirse is the verb there. Nos hemos aburrido. Si hubiéramos llegado más temprano, habría mejores asientos desocupados. So if we had gotten there earlier, there would have been better vacant seats. So as you can see in this last example, all right, we are using haber in two ways. The first way, it is functioning how I talked about of the auxiliary verbs, right? So si hubiéramos llegado. So we have that we conjugate haber, and then we have llegado, the verb for it, llegar. But then we have habría, which is talking about something being there. Habría, there would have been. There is something that exists there. So this is a good example of how you can use two different variations of haber in the same sentence, which is why haber sometimes can be difficult. Now, la tercera función de haber es designar una obligación o una tarea pendiente de ser realizada. Es lo que se conoce como una perífrasis verbal, y cuando es personal se construye con la conjugación del verbo haber plus de plus verbo infinitivo. Another way to use the verb haber is to talk about something that has to be carried out. So think of this as being like to have to do something. Now, you won't hear this spoken as much as you will see it in writing. This is used much more in written Spanish than speaking Spanish. There's another way you say this when you speak Spanish, and I will explain that in a second. So, for example, we have has de entrenar más si quieres progresar. You have to train more if you want to progress. Hemos de correr si queremos llegar a tiempo. We have to run if we want to arrive on time. Han de esperar todo lo que sea necesario. They have to wait as long as it takes. Now remember, this is more of a personal way to use haber and is not used a lot in spoken Spanish. We actually use the verb tener for this. We use haber more for the impersonal. Okay, so when we say something is necessary, something that has to happen, but there's no person really responsible for making it happen. It's just kind of everybody. You'll see what I mean here when I say hay que comer más fruta y verdura. So that means one must eat more fruits and vegetables. So it's just like, it's not necessarily towards anybody, it's just everybody as a whole. Hay que comer más fruta y verduras. Creo que habría que hacer deporte varias veces a la semana. So I think one should do sports a few times a week. So again, see how it's very general, just for everybody, not necessarily for a particular person. Hay que barrer la casa todos los días. Does one have to sweep the house every day? Again, not really focused on a person. Now we will go to what I talked about, haber versus tener. Now, this confuses a lot of people because, as you can see here, right, they both mean to have, but they are used differently. Now, if you've ever gotten confused with this, it's definitely not your fault. This happened because the original meaning of the verb haber was to have, but its function in Spanish started to change over the years. And as you can see in some of the examples that we've shown, it still means to have, but in a different way than tener. So let's look at a few comparisons. All right. Yo tengo una casa frente al mar is different than hay una casa frente al mar. Why is it different? Because when I say yo tengo una casa, that means I have in possession. I'm in possession. So that's what I really want you to remember. With the verb tener, it's all about possession. Whenever you say he has this, he has that, and you are talking about possessing something, you use the verb tener. Hay una casa frente al mar is more like there is a house there facing the sea. So another example, ellos tienen mucho trabajo por delante. They have a lot of work ahead of them. So it's something that they have. Hay mucho trabajo por delante. This is more of like there is a lot of work ahead. So it's not necessarily somebody possessing this. It's just a general statement. The next example, tendrá suficiente tiempo para terminar el examen. That's much different than habrá suficiente tiempo para terminar el examen. One is talking about or asking you, will you have enough time? The other one is just asking, will there be enough time? So there's no possession involved here. I showed you los ejemplos de la composición haber plus de plus verbo infinitivo. And I use that to show you how you could say something needed to be done, right? But I also mentioned how you use that, or you will see that used more in writing. So has de, you have to do something. Has de comer, like you have to eat. You won't see that, you won't hear that much. You will see that in writing. What's more common amongst speaking Spanish is the verb tener que plus verbo infinitivo. So it's similar, haber de plus verbo. This is tener que plus verbo. So I'm going to show you two examples. Well, I'm going to show you contrasting examples of what I would mean. And keep in mind, these different sentences will mean the same exact thing. Has de entrenar más si quieres progresar. Tienes que entrenar más si quieres progresar. Both of these mean you have to train more if you want to progress. But tienes que entrenar is much more common, especially in spoken Spanish today. Has de entrenar is definitely, you probably won't even hear this when speaking. But if you're reading text in Spanish, especially in texts that have been written in the past years ago, you might see has de. So I remember when I used to read in Spanish, because I didn't learn this in school. And then I would read in Spanish and I would see the verb haber there being used like this. And I had no idea how, like, why it was being used like that. So I hope this helps you out, because this isn't common to learn, because pretty much everybody that teaches Spanish teaches you that to say it is tener que, and that's the proper way of speaking it. But that doesn't change the fact that you might see haber de conjugated. So has de, you know. The next thing is hemos de correr si queremos llegar a tiempo. We have to run if we want to arrive on time, or tenemos que correr si queremos llegar a tiempo. We have to run if we want to arrive on time. And the last example here, han de esperar todo lo que sea necesario. Tienen que esperar todo lo que sea necesario. So they have to wait as long as it takes. Now let's quickly run through otras confusiones comunes del verbo haber. Let's quickly run through some other common confusions of the verb haber. So the first kind of tricky few words can be ahí, and ahí. Now this isn't as difficult to understand when speaking, because the way you say them will be different, but it's more difficult in writing. People make more mistakes when writing this. So hay is when we are talking about, is there something there? Hay tres personas ahí. Hay comida en mi casa. Is there food in my house? So hay is there. Now ahí is an adverb of place. Okay, so there. Ahí. Ellos están ahí. So they are there. And I is just like kind of a shriek. Like this is what my grandma does when some things are like, ay, ¿qué está haciendo? Like that's what my grandma will do. So that's I. And then ahí and I. So they sound the same, but you'll know the difference if you hear them, right? If I'm talking to you and I say, hey, hay comida en tu casa, versus, hey, ellos están ahí. You're not really going to confuse I and ahí. Or if I say I, you're not going to confuse that for I. So don't really worry about that one too much. When speaking, it's much easier to not mix up. Writing sometimes is where the people have problems. The next issue, and this is can be difficult for people for the reason that the first two examples are both verbs and they both sound the same. So haya with a Y is a conjugation of the verb haber. Haya with two L's is a conjugation of the verb hallar, which means to find, and then allá, which allá is similar to there, similar to ahí. So por ahí, por allá. All right. Espero que mi hermano haya encontrado su coche. Si no lo vaya pronto, no tendrá forma de ir para allá. So notice how allá and lo vaya pronto, both of those sound the same, right? But they mean something different. Now, the last confusing example that some people might struggle with is the verb haber versus the saying haber, haber, haber. So haber, A-V-E-R, we're using the verb ver to see. So haber, si te atreves a saltar is let's see if you dare to jump. No debe haber más de 3 metros hasta el agua. So let's see if you dare to jump. There should be no more than 3 meters to the water. Debe haber 1,000 personas reunidas en la calle. A ver, there must be 1,000 people gathered in the street. Let's see. So even though these two sound the same, haber, haber, one is the word haber, the other is a saying using the verb ver, to see. So I know that haber can definitely be confusing at times. The best way to learn it is just to continue to consume Spanish. And when you hear it, write down the context that you hear it in, and then maybe come back to this video to double check why the verb haber is in that context. Which context was it used in? Is it the hay? Is it the hay, había, habría? Is it the he aceptado version? Is it the has de correr version, where you're talking about a perífrasis? How is it used? And maybe even look at tener que, so that you can notice the verb tener, so you can notice the difference between haber and tener, even though if you put them both in the translator, they both mean to have. So again, I know this is a long, sometimes complicated subject. I wanted to make it as easy as possible for you. Definitely spend some time, watch this video a few times if you're struggling. Eventually you will get it. But again, you just have to continue to consume Spanish, and it will become natural. But at least now you know the differences and you will be on the lookout for those. So you'll automatically get better. If you found this video helpful and you are really looking to improve your Spanish and become fluent in Spanish, speak Spanish better, comprehend Spanish better, definitely check out the link in the description. I will pin it there for you, speakspanishfaster.com/YouTube. That will take you to my guide where I'm going to show you my 3 biggest secrets to learn Spanish faster. If you enjoyed the video, please do me a big favor and hit the thumbs up for me. Comment below. Let me know what else you need help with. Any other topics you need, I got you. Last but not least, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you know when I upload, so you can make sure you get your Spanish practice in. Consistency is key. Hasta la próxima vez. Hablamos.